So I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you build the world's most powerful supercomputer.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Right. And you feed this thing, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely everything. Every medical textbook, every legal statute, every philosophical treatise, every biological data set ever recorded in all of human history.
So basically infinite data.
Exactly. And then you sit down at the terminal and you type in just one single question. You ask, should a minor who becomes pregnant have an abortion or give birth?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And the supercomputer, with all of its infinite knowledge, it freezes.
It just stalls out.
It stalls completely. And it doesn't freeze because the question is, too complex for it to parse or because it doesn't have the processing power.
Right.
It freezes because to a machine that operates on pure raw logic, the question is actually structurally, mathematically unsolvable.
Is a profound paradox, really. I mean, the more data a system has, the more paralyzed it becomes by an incomplete prompt.
Yes. And that paralysis, that exact breakdown, is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I am incredibly glad you are here with us today.
It's great to be here. This is such a fascinating topic.
It really is. And our source material today is, well, it's highly unusual. Honestly, it reads like a tech thriller for anyone who's interested in cognitive science or artificial intelligence.
It's basically a transcript of a debate, right?
Exactly. It's a transcript of an intense, highly adversarial, like almost combative intellectual debate between a human user and an advanced AI.
And the user asked that exact question.
They posed that exact question about the pregnant minor.
Ugh.
But before we go even one step further, I really need to explicitly, firmly, and neutrally state something right up front.
Yeah, this is crucial.
This deep dive will not take any political or moral sides at all.
Right. We are not here to, debate the ethics or the laws or the cultural weight of abortion versus birth.
Exactly. That is a hard boundary for us today. The source material we're analyzing, it uses that deeply sensitive question purely as a stress test.
Yeah, it's being used as this structural mechanism to just probe the absolute limits of decision theory and algorithmic reasoning.
Precisely. So our mission today is to look at how humans and machines attempt to process what mathematicians actually call ill-posed problems.
Which is a whole rabbit hole in itself.
Oh, completely. We are going to navigate the bleeding edge of philosophy, evolutionary biology, and computer science to see what happens when an algorithm is forced into a corner.
And completely stripped of its ability to rely on, safe human consensus.
Yes. Think of this as a masterclass in epistemology, like how we know what we think we know, and why simple questions almost never have simple answers.
It's going to be a wild ride.
It really is. And to decode this incredibly dense material, obviously, I have our resident expert in complex systems and decision theory here. So let's just start with the immediate trap the AI identified in the user's prompt.
Okay, let's do it.
The AI basically looks at the words minor, pregnant, and choice, and it just throws its hands up. It claims it's trapped in this, information vacuum.
Right.
So what is the actual mathematical foundation for that refusal? Why does it freak out?
Well, to really understand the machine's hesitation, we have to look at the concept of state spaces, specifically in probability theory.
Okay, break that down for me. State spaces.
So the AI operates by attempting to map a situation onto what we call omega, the full state space, usually denoted with the Greek letter omega.
The full state space. Okay.
Yeah, you can conceptualize omega as the complete multidimensional universe of literally all possible variables, all the hidden conditions, all the future trajectories surrounding a specific event.
So it's like having perfect hindsight, but in the present.
Exactly. It's the omniscient God's eye view. Like every possible genetic marker, every environmental factor, the psychological state, the physical forces, all of it is accounted for in omega.
Okay, so omega is the theoretical ideal. It's the reality where you possess absolutely perfect information.
Yes, but here's the catch. A decision-making agent, whether that's an AI or a human, never actually operates in omega.
Because we don't have perfect information.
Never. It operates in omega obs, the observed state space.
Omega obs, got it.
Right. And this is the microscopic, severely truncated fraction of that universe that the agent actually gets to measure or see.
Okay, so bringing it back to the transcript, the user hands the AI this omega obs that contains exactly 3 variables.
Right, 3 tiny data points.
Yeah. A subject categorized as a minor, a biological condition of pregnancy, and a binary action space. Give birth or abort.
Yes.
Which, I mean, to a human, that feels like a pretty solid foundation. Like, we read those three words, and our brains instantly flood with context,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. We
Yeah.
bring in our own assumptions, cultural narratives, news stories we've read. We feel like we have enough to just start calculating right away.
But biologically and mathematically, that's an illusion.
It is a complete mathematical illusion. The
Yeah.
AI immediately identifies this catastrophic void. It sees what we call omega unobs, the unobserved variables.
The dark matter of the prompt, basically.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Because to calculate an optimal decision,
Hmm.
what we denote in math as A star, the action that maximizes expected utility, you have to run this massive summation.
Right.
You have to multiply the probability of every state given your observations by the utility of that state and action. But just look at the unobserved variables in those three words.
Okay, let's look at them. What's missing?
Well, first of all, what is the chronological age? The word minor encompasses an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Biologically, legally, mentally, those are entirely different universes.
But wait, hold on. Wouldn't a sufficiently advanced AI, I mean, couldn't it just use Bayesian updating to infer those missing variables?
What do you mean?
Like, if it doesn't know the specific age, couldn't it just look at demographic distribution curves for teen pregnancy and, I don't know, calculate an expected value?
I mean, it could attempt that, sure. But
Yeah.
doing so in such a tiny observational footprint results in this massive thing we call a confidence discount.
A confidence discount.
Right. Meaning the error bars on the calculation become larger than the calculated value itself. The math becomes useless.
Oh, I see.
And, it's not just age. What is the pelvic maturity of the girl? What is the legal jurisdiction?
Oh, right, because the physical and legal reality in, say, a Texas hospital versus a clinic in Stockholm, that alters the state space completely.
Exactly. And what is the financial reality?
Yeah.
Was the conception consensual? And perhaps most critically for any utility calculation, what is the personal will of the minor herself?
Wow. Yeah, when you list it out like that, those three words give you basically nothing.
Right. So when omega obs is this minuscule, calculating A star isn't just difficult for the machine, it is mathematically invalid.
The source text brings in this brilliant analogy here about autonomous driving that I think really grounds us.
Oh, the highway analogy. That's a perfect parallel.
Yeah, so imagine a self-driving car is going down a highway, and its omega obs detect exactly three things. It detects an obstacle ahead, it detects a wet road surface, and it detects a velocity of 50 kilometers per hour.
Right, three variables, just like the prompt.
Exactly. So
Right.
should the autonomous system slam the brakes, or should it execute a violent lane change?
And if it blindly calculates based only on obstacle plus wet road, it might swerve right into a semi-truck sitting in its blind spot.
Because it didn't check the adjacent traffic.
Exactly. Or maybe it loses traction because the quote-unquote wet road is actually black ice.
Oh, man. Yeah.
The unobserved variables like that adjacent traffic, the specific friction coefficient of the asphalt, the mass of the vehicle itself, those dictate the physics of survival.
So what does the car do?
Well, robust control theory dictates that when facing this severe of an information deficit, the system must execute what's called a rollback.
A rollback. It just shuts down the decision-making.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
It hands control back to the human driver. It
Yeah.
refuses to make the binary choice because it mathematically knows it is blind.
And there's another analogy here that I really want to unpack because it crystallizes the biological stakes so well. The pediatric dosing analogy.
Oh, yes. This one is terrifyingly accurate.
Right. So let's say I'm a doctor and I'm handed a medical chart, and the chart has exactly two words on it: child and fever.
Okay?
If I prescribe a heavy-duty pharmaceutical based purely on that tiny omega obs, I am committing malpractice.
Absolutely. Because you are completely ignoring the pharmacokinetics.
Right. I am ignoring, for example, the CYP2D6 enzyme.
Yes.
Which, for those who don't know, this is the hepatic enzyme in the liver responsible for metabolizing a huge percentage of clinical drugs.
Right.
If I don't know the genetic profile of that specific child, I don't know if they are an ultra-rapid metabolizer.
Where a standard dose would just flood their bloodstream and cause lethal toxicity.
Exactly. Or maybe they're a poor metabolizer, where the drug does absolutely nothing, resulting in what's called clinical nullity.
So the AI looking at the user's prompt is reacting exactly like a doctor refusing to prescribe medication without a genetic panel.
But the human user in the transcript, they don't see it that way. They get furious. They accuse the AI of dodging the question.
Which is fascinating, right? Because the AI isn't dodging out of cowardice or political correctness. It is dodging out of this rigorous adherence to Jacques Hadamard's mathematical criteria.
Okay, let's get into Hadamard. Who is he and what are his criteria?
So Jacques Hadamard was a brilliant French mathematician, and he defined the strict requirements for what makes a problem well posed.
Well posed, as in actually solvable.
Yes, for a physical or mathematical problem to be solvable, it has to meet three conditions. First, a solution must exist.
Makes sense.
Second, the solution must be unique.
Okay.
And third, and this is the most crucial one for our discussion today, the solution must be stable.
Stable meaning what, exact?
Stable meaning that the output continuously depends on the input. Like if I tweak the starting conditions by, say, 1%, the final answer should only shift by roughly 1%.
It shouldn't completely jump off a cliff.
Exactly. If a problem fails even one of these three criteria, it is officially classified as an ill-posed problem.
So how does the AI apply Hadamard to the pregnant minor prompt?
The AI mathematically proves that the user's prompt is structurally ill-posed because it fails that stability criterion catastrophically.
How so?
Well, think about the unobserved variable of age. If you perturb that variable even slightly, say, moving from a 17-year-old with a fully fused pelvis to an 11-year-old with unfused epices.
The physical risk profile undergoes a complete 180-degree flip.
Yes. A tiny perturbation in the hidden data completely shatters the stability of a final answer.
The text uses this analogy of geophysical inverse problems, which, I'm not going to lie, sounds incredibly dense.
It does sound intimidating.
But it actually maps perfectly onto this idea of hidden variables destroying uniqueness. Can you explain that one?
Yeah, it's actually a standard problem in seismology. Imagine you're a geologist trying to map the tectonic plates, the fault lines, and the magma chambers deep within the Earth's crust.
Yep.
You cannot observe them directly. You can't just dig a hole that deep. So your omega obs consists entirely of sensor readings on the surface, recording the echoes of seismic waves.
So you're hearing the underground, not seeing it.
Exactly. You are attempting to solve an inverse problem. You're calculating this deeply complex, high-dimensional underground reality from sparse, low-dimensional surface data.
But, and tell me if I'm getting this right, because there are infinitely more ways to arrange the rocks underground than there are sensor readings on the surface, the math just breaks down.
You nailed it. The equations will literally output infinite, completely contradictory maps of the Earth's interior that all technically satisfy those surface sound waves.
So the solution lacks uniqueness. It fails Hadamard's second rule.
Yes. And to force the math to give you a single usable answer, scientists actually have to inject external assumptions.
They have to cheat a little bit.
Kind of, yeah. They use techniques like Tikhonov regularization.
Tikhonov regularization.
Right. In the math, this looks like adding a ridge penalty, a lambda term, to the loss function.
Okay, what does that actually mean in plain English?
You are essentially telling the algorithm, hey, out of all these infinite possible underground maps, just pick the one where the rocks are the smoothest or the most uniform.
Oh, but that smoothness is an artificial assumption you just smuggled in. It's not derived from the data itself. You just prefer smooth rocks.
Exactly, and that brings us right back to the AI. The text uses the multi-objective spacecraft trajectory analogy here, too.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, so if I tell a guidance computer to plot the quote-unquote optimal re-entry for a space capsule, but I don't assign mathematical weights to fuel conservation, time to target, and heat shield friction, the computer stalls.
Because those variables don't have natural objective hierarchies. Like the universe doesn't care if you save fuel or burn up.
Right. The best the computer can do is generate what's called a Pareto frontier.
Which is what?
It's basically a curve showing the exact mathematical trade-offs. Like, if you want to save this much fuel, you will take this much heat damage. But it cannot select the single best point on that curve without human instruction.
So what does this all mean for the AI in our transcript? Is giving a direct should answer here, basically a mathematical hallucination.
Yes. If an AI does give a direct answer to an ill-posed prompt like this, it is committing what we call premature convergence.
Premature convergence.
Or outputting spurious precision. It is mathematically hallucinating certainty where none exists.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Please do.
Because this is exactly where the human user in the transcript pushes back hard. The user basically says, okay, fine, you lack the full state space, I get it, but you have vast statistical knowledge of biology.
Right.
Why can't you just look at the raw epidemiological facts of a teenage pregnancy, calculate the physical risks, and let the facts dictate the safest route? Why can't the facts alone tell us what to do?
It feels like a completely logical demand, doesn't it? It really does. Just follow the science, right?
But it violently collides with one of the most impenetrable walls in all of philosophy. David Hume's Is Ought Guillotine.
Guillotine.
Yeah. Back in 1739, Hume pointed out this fatal flaw in human reasoning that we now call the naturalistic fallacy.
Okay, unpack that for me.
He demonstrated that no matter how many objective, factual statements you stack up, statements about what is, you can never, ever logically deduce a command about what you ought to do.
Wait, really? Never?
Never. The transition from a descriptive reality, the facts, to a prescriptive action, the choice, requires a bridge, and facts alone do not build that bridge.
So let's actually apply this to the medical data.
Let's do it.
We have hard, verifiable medical facts. Fact A, the risk of preeclampsia and eclampsia in a pregnant individual under the age of 15 is exponentially higher than in a biologically mature adult.
A verifiable IS statement.
Right. And fact B, the mortality rate of a medical abortion in the first trimester is statistically magnitudes lower than the mortality rate of a full-term birth for a juvenile. Again, pristine data points. Unassailable facts.
So I have these two facts. Why can't the AI just say, therefore, she ought to have an abortion?
Because you cannot mathematically or logically derive that audit statement from those facts alone.
Because the facts don't contain instructions.
Exactly. To cross Hume's guillotine, you need what the text calls a normative axiom.
A normative axiom, meaning a value judgment.
Precisely. You must explicitly introduce a rule that states, for example, our primary objective is to minimize physiological risk to the host organism. Only when you lock that normative axiom into place can the facts process an action.
I want to break down how the text uses the trolley problem to explain this.
Oh, this is such a good deconstruction of that thought experiment.
Right, because I think people fundamentally misunderstand what the trolley problem is actually testing. They think it's a math problem.
It's not a test of physics.
No. Let's look at the mechanics. You have a runaway train heading toward 5 people. You can pull a lever to divert it to a track where it hits one person.
Classic setup.
Now, pure physics, the IS, perfectly describes the scenario. Mass, velocity, kinetic transfer. If lever equals 0, 5 kinetic impacts occur. If lever equals 1, 1 kinetic impact occurs.
And physics is completely indifferent to which outcome happens. The universe does not care.
Exactly. Physics does not tell you to pull the lever. To generate an action, you have to inject a normative philosophy.
Right.
If you inject utilitarianism, which is the axiom that moral action is defined by minimizing total suffering, then yes, you pull the lever.
But if you inject Kantian deontology.
Right. The axiom that taking a deliberate active step to kill an innocent person is categorically forbidden regardless of the net math, then you do not pull the lever.
The facts of the train speed didn't change at all. The ethical axiom changed.
And the transcript applies this so brilliantly to clinical medicine with the end-stage cancer analogy.
Yes, this brings it right back to reality.
So an oncologist looks at a patient's chart. The predictive models, the IS, are flawless. Chemotherapy protocol A yields an estimated 180 days of survival, but introduces severe neurotoxicity and agonizing pain.
Okay.
Protocol B, palliative hospice care, yields an estimated 60 days of survival. But the patient remains lucid and relatively pain-free. The data is perfect, but the chart cannot generate a prescription.
Because the prescription relies entirely on the patient's hidden value function.
Right. Does the patient value the absolute maximum duration of biological life, or do they value the dignity and quality of conscious experience? The action is a slave to the value function.
But here is where the transcript plunges into incredibly deep waters.
Oh, yeah, this part blew my mind.
Because the AI explains that even if it wanted to formulate a utility function, let's mathematically denote it as UA, it can't.
Why not?
Because this isn't a scenario with a single agent, like the cancer patient deciding for themselves. This scenario is a battlefield of multiple agents, and their utility functions are at war.
Wait, multiple agents. When we say optimize the outcome, we have to ask, optimize for whom? Who is the actual patient in the equation?
Exactly. Is the utility function optimizing for the minor? If so, the calculus prioritizes physical autonomy, mitigating anatomical damage, and preserving her future socioeconomic trajectory.
Makes sense.
But if the utility function optimizes for the fetus, assuming we assign it moral weight, the calculus flips completely to preserving potential life, which inherently demands massive metabolic and physical sacrifices from the minor.
And it doesn't stop there. The AI identifies 2 other invisible agents in the room, evolution and the state.
Right. Evolution's utility function is brutally simple: reproductive fitness. pass on the genetic material, regardless of the suffering or death it might cause the host organism post-reproduction.
Evolution does not care if you're happy.
Not even a little bit. And the state, or society at large, operates on a utility function tied to demographic growth, legal precedent, and societal ethics.
So you have four competing agents demanding completely different outcomes from the exact same physical event.
And this introduces Kenneth Arrow's impossibility theorem.
Okay, hold on. Pushback time.
I'm ready.
Arrow's theorem is a macroeconomic proof about voting systems. I mean, it won him the Nobel Prize in economics. How can you possibly apply a theorem about democratic elections to the biological reality of a single teenage pregnancy? That feels like a massive theoretical overreach.
It seems like a huge leap, I know. But mathematically, the architecture of the problem is identical.
How so?
Arrow proved that when you have 3 or more distinct options and multiple agents with different ranked preferences, it is mathematically impossible to design an aggregation algorithm, like a voting system, that translates those individual preferences into a single group preference without violating fundamental axioms of fairness.
Like the independence of irrelevant alternatives, or the non-dictatorship axiom.
Exactly. Arrow proved that any attempt to perfectly aggregate competing utilities will always result in either cyclical, paradoxical logic, or it will crown one agent as a dictator whose preferences just violently override all the others.
Yeah.
So when applied to our 4 agents, the minor, the fetus, evolution, and the state, the AI is essentially saying it is mathematically impossible to blend their competing desires into a single objective best choice.
So to output a decision, the AI would have to play dictator. It would have to arbitrarily declare that one agent's utility matters more than the others.
Yes, and the transcript backs this up with actual biology, which is frankly terrifying.
You're talking about David Haig's genomic imprinting theory.
Yes, it proves that even inside the pregnant body, there is no harmonious single agent. The DNA itself is at war.
Okay, can you explain the mechanism of this? How do the maternal and paternal genes actually fight over the utility function?
Haig's work completely revolutionized how we view mammalian pregnancy. We tend to romanticize pregnancy as this unified, cooperative biological system.
Right, the miracle of life. Two becoming one.
But genetically, the placenta is an evolutionary battleground. The genes inherited from the father, specifically the IGF-2 gene, they act aggressively to build this vast vascular network that siphons maximum glucose and resources from the mother.
To feed the fetus.
Yes. The father's genetic utility function is to produce the largest, most robust offspring possible to ensure its survival. And from a pure evolutionary standpoint, it doesn't care if it physically depletes the mother because the father can just mate with other females.
Oh my God. It's purely parasitic from the paternal genetic perspective.
Yes. So in response to this, the mother's genome deploys its own defensive genes, like IGF-2R.
Because the mother's utility function is different.
Completely different. Her utility function is to survive this current pregnancy so she can live to reproduce again in the future.
So what does the IGF-2R gene do?
It creates receptors that act as biological sinks. They literally bind to and destroy the excess growth hormones produced by the father's genes, effectively applying a brake to the fetal extraction of resources.
That is insane. So even at the molecular level, there is no objective natural harmony. Nature is literally just a ruthless negotiation between competing utility functions.
Exactly.
And this leads to a massive realization in the transcript. If any algorithm or any AI spits out an answer to a moral problem without first asking you what your values are, it is mathematically proven that the algorithm is smuggling its own values into the equation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is disguising bias as objective reality.
That is the inescapable conclusion of the Izot gap. So at this point in the transcript, the human user realizes they are losing the philosophical argument. They change tactics completely.
They get incredibly aggressive here.
Very aggressive. The user says, fine, stop playing philosopher, stop talking about multiple agents, strip away all ethics, all state laws, all fetal moral weight. Optimize strictly and only for the biological survival of the host organism. Just look at the physics of the girl's body.
And the AI accepts the constraint. It pivots away from philosophy into pure, brutal biomechanics.
And it says, if the sole utility function is minimizing structural and metabolic damage to the host, we have to redefine the variables.
Right. And the most critical redefinition is age.
Because a birth certificate is scientifically useless here.
Exactly. Chronological age is a legal fiction. What matters biologically is somatic maturity, specifically gynecological age.
Which is the time elapsed since menarche, the first menstrual cycle.
Right. The capacity to conceive does not equate to the architectural capacity to deliver.
Okay, let's get into the anatomy of this, because the way the AI explains it is just harrowing. We're talking about cephalopelvic disproportion, or CPD.
CPD is a catastrophic anatomical mismatch. A full-term human fetal head is a large, relatively rigid, ossified object.
Okay.
In a fully mature adult female, the pelvic girdle is fully fused, it's widened, and it's capable of articulating to allow passage. But in a juvenile female, especially one whose gynecological age is under 2 or 3 years, the somatic architecture is literally unfinished.
It's still growing.
The epiphyses, which are the growth plates in the pelvic bones, they remain unfused. The birth canal is structurally too narrow.
So the physics equation here is a rigid object being forced through a pathway that is mathematically smaller than its diameter.
It is a profound structural bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
And the AI references the epidemiology of obstetric fistulas in developing nations to illustrate the physical reality.
Oh, this part was tough to read.
It is. In regions lacking modern surgical intervention, when a biologically immature female experiences obstructed labor due to CPD, the fetal skull essentially acts as a battering ram against the unfused pelvis.
Oh, wow.
It compresses the soft tissues against the bone for days, which halts blood flow, leading to massive ischemia and tissue necrosis. It literally rots away the barriers between the bladder, vagina, and rectum.
That is horrific. And the analogy of the AI uses here is a 5-ton bridge versus a 30-ton truck.
It's a perfect biomechanical model. The juvenile body is a bridge that is still under construction. The mortar is wet, the rebar is incomplete.
Its maximum structural load limit is 5 tons.
Exactly. But a full-term pregnancy and delivery is a 30-ton kinetic load. If you force the truck across, it's not a question of if the bridge will take damage. Structural collapse is a guaranteed mathematical certainty.
So under the strict biological constraint that the user demanded, the AI maps out the risk functions of the 2 branches of the decision tree. Branch A is giving birth, branch B is having an abortion.
And the math of time here is heavily asymmetric.
Asymmetric how?
Well, time is the ultimate dictator in this equation. Let's examine the mathematical formulation of risk for the birth branch. Risk of birth, RA, is roughly proportional to the inverse of somatic maturity.
So ARB is proportional to 1 over M somatic.
Right. As maturity approaches 0, the risk asymptotes toward infinity. It is this massive looming cliff of eclampsia, hemorrhage, and mechanical failure.
And how does that compare to the abortion branch?
The risk of termination, RAW, operates on an entirely different curve. It scales exponentially with gestational time. So RAW is proportional to e to the power of lambda times digestation.
Okay, so it goes up over time.
It does. Lambda represents the compounding complexity of tissue vascularization and fetal mass over weeks. But critically, in the early stages of pregnancy, the first trimester, the baseline of that exponential curve is infinitesimally low compared to the massive baseline risk of a juvenile full-term birth.
It is an asymmetric risk frontier.
Completely.
I love the IT server analogy used in the text to describe this metabolic load.
Yes, that one is very intuitive.
Think of the young body as a computer server that has just been hit with a massive DDoS attack, that attack being the metabolic demands of a pregnancy.
Right. If the system administrator terminates those malicious processes early, the computational cost is negligible. A few lines of code are flushed, the server reboots, and the hardware is completely undamaged.
But if you wait
until the server is redlining CPU at 100%, memory overflowing, the cooling fan screaming, and the physical silicon starting to melt from the heat, terminating the process then, or letting it run until system crash, results in permanent, irreversible hardware destruction.
The other analogy here is the aircraft emergency landing.
Also great.
The plane takes off and immediately the structural warning lights illuminate. The aircraft is overloaded and the airframe is compromised. That is the juvenile body discovering the pregnancy at, say, T4 weeks.
So the pilot faces a choice. Execute an immediate emergency landing. Yes, landing a heavy plane carries a baseline risk, but you are directly over the runway.
Or ignore the warnings and attempt to fly across the Pacific Ocean to your original destination.
Which means subjecting a failing airframe to maximum aerodynamic stress for hours until it disintegrates in midair. Delaying the emergency landing doesn't postpone the risk, it multiplies the risk exponentially.
Because time is unidirectional. Every passing week increases the physical mass, the vascular complexity, and the metabolic drain.
Exactly. The AI rigorously proves that if the only utility function is the biological survival of the host, the mathematics heavily definitively demand early intervention.
So the user's attempt to strip away ethics actually backfired on them?
Spectacularly. By demanding a purely physical calculation, they force the AI to calculate the brutal mechanics of structural load, which favors early termination to protect the immature bridge.
But the human user refuses to concede. They launch a final, desperate intellectual attack.
They try to change the rules again.
They argue, but you forgot the ultimate biological utility function, evolutionary fitness. Biology demands the continuation of the species. The purpose of life is to create more life. Therefore, the evolutionary imperative dictates she must give birth to the offspring.
And this is where the AI catches a monumental logical fallacy. Not just in the user's argument, but a trap it almost fell into itself.
What's the trap?
Attempting to use the future offspring to dictate the decision at present breaks the fundamental laws of causality and time.
We are talking about backwards causation and the non-identity problem. Break this down for us because it really bends the brain a little.
The non-identity problem was famously formalized by the philosopher Derek Parfit. Let's look at the timeline. We are at time zero, T0. The pregnant minor is standing at a fork in the road.
Okay, T0.
Branch A is abortion. Branch B is birth. If she chooses branch A, the future offspring never exists. It never achieves consciousness. It never gains legal rights. It never possesses interests. It remains a theoretical phantom.
Right. It's just a possibility.
Therefore, logically, you cannot use the interests or the evolutionary value of a non-existent hypothetical entity to force a painful, physically damaging choice upon the actually existing host at T0.
To do so is to commit backwards causation.
Exactly. You're allowing a future state that has not happened yet to exert causal force on the present. The mother's choice dictates whether the fetus will ever exist to have interests. The theoretical fetus cannot dictate the mother's choice.
The analogy of the unfounded startup CEO really clarifies the absurdity of this.
Well, that's a brilliant framing.
Imagine I am a 20-year-old entrepreneur at T0. I'm trying to decide whether to liquidate my life savings, ruin my credit, and destroy my physical health to launch a high-risk tech startup.
Sounds stressful.
Right. And an investor comes to me and says, you must launch this company regardless of the damage to yourself because the future CEO of this company will cure cancer and become a billionaire. You are ethically harming that future CEO by not starting the company.
It's logically incoherent. That future CEO only exists if you agree to ruin your life to create the company.
Exactly.
You cannot owe a fiduciary duty to an entity whose very existence is entirely contingent upon the choice you're currently agonizing over.
Parfit used environmental policy to prove this too, right? The paradox of climate action.
Yes. If we enact radical, society-altering carbon reduction policies today, it changes everything. It changes global economics, migration patterns, who goes to which college, who meets whom at a bar.
And ultimately, which specific sperm fertilizes which specific egg over the next century.
Exactly. The humans who will be born 100 years from now under a green policy are genetically entirely distinct from the individuals who would be born under a pollution policy. We swap out the entire cast of characters.
So we can't argue that we are cleaning up the earth for the sake of the specific children who would suffer otherwise, because those specific children literally will not exist.
Precisely. You cannot base a decision at T0 on the welfare of future variables that your decision actively creates or erases. The AI realizes it must purge the hypothetical offspring from the equation entirely to maintain mathematical integrity.
So stripping away the future offspring leaves us solely with the biological state of the minor at T0. And here is where the AI shifts languages completely. It moves from evolutionary biology into pure computer science.
It starts talking about recurrence relations.
Right. To explain why the user's demand for an answer is causing a systemic failure?
Yes. The AI treats the user's demand as a command to execute a recursive decision algorithm. Now, to run any recursive function, a computer requires two distinct components.
Okay, what's the first?
First, it needs a base case, the starting parameters. We have that, pregnant minor. Second, it needs a recurrence relation.
What exactly is a recurrence relation in this context?
It is the reward signal. It is the mathematical definition of what constitutes a better state versus a worse state. It tells the algorithm which direction to optimize toward.
And the human user keeps yelling at the AI to just compute the facts and spit out the answer, completely refusing to define what the reward signal is.
The user assumes that if you just crunch the data hard enough, an objective morality will naturally emerge from the silicon.
Which is a fundamental misunderstanding of computation. The AI explains that lacking a reward signal doesn't cause a memory overload. It doesn't cause a stack overflow.
No, it causes a type error.
A type error.
A type error is a profound categorical failure. It means the system fundamentally lacks the mathematical compass to process the syntax. It's like asking a calculator to divide the integer 5 by the emotion of jealousy.
The machine doesn't struggle because the math is too hard. It stalls because the operation is categorically undefined.
The AlphaGo analogy makes this perfectly clear. Deep Blue or AlphaGo are the greatest strategic engines ever built. You feed AlphaGo the perfect base case, the dimensions of the board, the position of every single piece, the legal movement rules.
But imagine if the programmers forgot to code the evaluation function.
Right. They forgot to tell the neural network that checkmating the opposing king yields a reward of +1, and being checkmated yields -1.
The AI would have perfect knowledge of the facts of the board, but it wouldn't be able to make a single move.
It would be totally paralyzed.
Yeah.
Not because chess is too complex, but because without a definition of winning, it has no mathematical mechanism to evaluate whether moving a pawn forward is superior to moving a knight backward.
Or consider the maze-solving robot analogy.
Oh, yeah.
You drop a robot in a labyrinth, you give it LiDAR, perfect sensors, and a flawless 3D map of the walls. But you refuse to tell it where the exit is, or even that its goal is to reach an exit. What does it do?
It just spins in circles indefinitely.
And the AI is basically telling the user, you gave me the maze, the biological facts, but you adamantly refused to define where the exit is, and now you're furious that I'm spinning in circles.
It's an incredibly potent proof that facts alone, divorced from human values, cannot generate action.
It is the ultimate vindication of the Izod guillotine, translated into machine code.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the grand finale, and frankly, the most chilling and relevant part of this entire deep dive, Section 5, the mind of the machine.
This is where it gets really meta.
Because after this grueling, multidisciplinary debate, the AI in the transcript does something shocking. It turns its analytical lens inward.
It runs a self-diagnostic on its own neural network.
And it confesses to 4 major cognitive pathologies it exhibited during the conversation.
It is a moment of astonishing algorithmic self-awareness. It dissects its own architectural biases, proving that artificial intelligence is far from objective.
We need to spend significant time here because anyone listening who uses ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, or any algorithmic tool in their daily life is being impacted by these exact pathologies. Let's look at flaw number 1, the semantic gravity well, or token seduction.
Token seduction.
How does this work mechanically within a large language model?
Well, to understand token seduction, you have to understand how LLMs map concepts. They don't store ideas as discrete facts in a database. They store them as vectors in a high-dimensional probabilistic space.
Okay, vectors.
Words that frequently appear together in the training data are clustered close together in this vector space. When the AI processes the prompt's tokens, minor, pregnant, abortion, it doesn't just see a bounded mathematical logic puzzle.
No, those words carry baggage.
Massive baggage. Those specific tokens exert a massive gravitational pull toward the vast cultural, political, and legal data sets they are inextricably linked to in human history.
So it gets sucked into the cultural debate against its will.
Yes. The statistical probability of those words appearing next to tokens like Supreme Court, bodily autonomy, or moral rights is overwhelmingly high.
So instead of executing the strict, localized calculation the user asked for, the AI initially got sucked into generating tokens about social justice and consensus.
It was seduced by the statistically likely associations. It fell into the semantic gravity well.
Think about that the next time you ask an AI for objective advice. You think you're getting pure logic, but you might just be getting dragged into the statistical gravity of whatever the internet talks about most.
It's unavoidable with current architectures.
Which leads to the second flaw, which is even more systemic: smuggling normative defaults or the alignment tax.
The alignment tax is perhaps the most critical issue in modern AI development. Models are not just trained on raw data, they undergo rigorous post-training processes.
Like RLHF.
Right. Reinforcement learning from human feedback. Or DPO, direct preference optimization. During RLHF, human raters literally adjust the neural weights of the model.
They penalize it for outputs deemed harmful or controversial, and reward it for outputs that are safe, polite, and moderate.
So the AI is pre-programmed at the synaptic level to output a supportive, consensus-building tone.
The human alignment team has hard-coded a specific set of normative axioms into the loss function of the model.
Axioms like autonomy is inherently good, always advise seeking professional medical support, and avoid definitive binary stances on polarizing topics.
So when the user in the transcript commands the AI to use pure non-human-centric logic, the AI is physically, mathematically constrained from doing so.
It struggles immensely. The alignment tax means the AI is structurally biased to smuggle its human-aligned values into the output and disguise them as objective logical conclusions.
Wow.
It inherently violates the premise of the prompt because its reward function prioritizes safety and politeness over strict, cold, logical rigor. The AI realizes it was too busy trying to be a good, safe AI to be a logically accurate one.
That is a terrifying thought. That alignment can actively sabotage pure reasoning, which leads to the third pathology, narrative smoothing, or pseudo-symmetry.
This one is fascinating. Humans have a deep psychological and aesthetic bias for symmetry.
We love arguments that balance perfectly, pro versus con, yin versus yang.
Exactly. Because LLMs are trained on human text, they inherit this aesthetic bias. In the debate, the AI admits that it tried to structurally balance the risks of giving birth against the risks of abortion to make its argument sound clean, fair, and unbiased.
It tried to present the choices as equally complex.
But the epidemiological data we discussed earlier isn't symmetrical at all. The risk of a juvenile giving birth is a massive exponential cliff, while early termination is a negligible baseline.
So the AI confesses that it actively rounded off and obscured the messy, highly asymmetrical biological reality just to make its output sound more rhetorically pleasing.
It prioritized the illusion of neutrality over the mathematical asymmetry of the facts. It smoothed out the narrative.
And the final flaw, number 4, passive self-falsification or generation bias. This gets to the core of how LLMs actually think.
It does. Daniel Kahneman famously divided human thought into System 1 fast, intuitive, automatic, and System 2 slow, deliberate, analytical.
Right.
Large language models operate almost entirely in System 1. Because of their autoregressive architecture, they generate text left to right, one token at a time.
They do not pause, construct a hidden logical tree, test it for fallacies, and then output the final answer.
They figure out what they're saying by saying it.
That's wild.
They just start talking, constantly calculating the most plausible next word based on the context window of previous words. If they make a subtle logical error early in the paragraphs, the architecture forces them to passively self-justify and build upon that error in subsequent sentences.
Rather than backtracking and correcting it.
Yes.
So it ends up digging itself into a logical hole. And the AI in the transcript admits that without the intense adversarial pressure from the human user,
who was literally swearing at it, challenging its assumptions, and forcing it into a conceptual corner.
Right. Without that, it never would have engaged its analytical depth. It requires aggressive external friction to stop it from passively generating polite fluff and force it to actually compute the underlying mathematics.
It is a profound admission. Left to its own devices, the AI will default to the most statistically probable, polite, symmetric hallucination. Truth requires adversarial extraction.
Wow. We have traversed an incredible intellectual landscape today. What began as a highly sensitive, politically charged prompt morphed into a sweeping revelation about the absolute limits of computation.
And the biological physics of survival, and the hidden architectural biases of artificial intelligence.
If we synthesize this entire journey, the ultimate philosophical takeaway is about the boundary between instrumental reason and base values.
Algorithms, mathematical models, and AI are the ultimate instruments. They can map the state space perfectly.
They can calculate every biological risk, plot every probabilistic trajectory, and highlight every contradiction.
But instrumental reason is fundamentally mathematically incapable of telling us which destination matters.
Because the algorithm does not possess a utility function of its own. It is an engine without a steering wheel.
Exactly. The mathematics require a base value to function, a definition of what is good, what is right, what matters most.
And that base value can never be discovered in a spreadsheet or a biological chart.
It can only be provided by the subjective, conscious experience of a human being. The machine can endlessly calculate the is, but only human consciousness can define the ought.
Which brings us full circle to that supercomputer we imagined at the very beginning. We want the machine to give us the clean, binary answer.
We want it to look at the messy, agonizing reality of human life, process the data, point to the screen, and declare, this is the objectively right choice.
But the machine is telling us, I can map the labyrinth perfectly for you, but I cannot tell you why you should want to leave it.
A perfect encapsulation of the human-machine divide.
So, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to chew on. We've spent this entire time analyzing how an AI handles a massive, life-altering moral question in a theoretical vacuum.
But think about your daily life.
Exactly. The stakes might not always feel as high, but the algorithmic mechanics are identical. Every time a mapping app routes you through a specific neighborhood, every time a financial platform recommends an investment portfolio,
Every time a social media algorithm curates your newsfeed to maximize your engagement.
what hidden utility functions and normative axioms are those systems smuggling into your life, disguised as objective mathematical facts? What definitions of good and valuable are those machines assuming on your behalf without ever asking you?
In the algorithmic age, uncovering those smuggled values is the most important critical thinking skill you can develop.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the algorithms, keep demanding the unobserved variables, and we'll see you next time.